Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my blogcast. Hope you're well and have had a good couple of weeks. I, as ever, have been pretty busy. I went to a birthday meal for a good friend in Milton Keynes recently. I met them about 20 years ago, nearly now, when I basically took their job at a radio station. They were going to leave anyway, and we were kind of mates in the interim period before they left, so that was good. Had a fantastic time. We all met up in Wagamama's, which is a little bit tricky for me as a celiac, a gluten-free only eater, in that they do have a gluten-free section. Although not Celiac UK accredited, they do try their best to make everything as safe as possible. And I haven't had any problems in the 2 times I've eaten in there, but it is quite a limited menu for me. But I managed to find something I liked. I actually got to the birthday meal a bit late. Everybody was there before me, and they'd left me a seat next to the birthday girl, all of which was fine with me. I have no issue making a big entrance anywhere. In fact, I think I prefer it. Now, the group was made up from lots of different people that Amy knew from various places, although we didn't all really know each other, which obviously makes it interesting when you come to pay the bill at the end. As it happens, Wagamama's have got a QR code thing where you can zap the QR code and then you can pay your part of the bill online. So rather than making the waitress do 17 different credit card or debit card payments on the card machine, we all individually dipped in and paid it off online, which did work. And handily, we managed to get the maths just about right, so it was all paid and no one was left paying extra. And more importantly, the restaurant weren't out of pocket. I went to the final day of this year's Royal Ascot meeting. I have been going for several years now. I went with Linda and another couple who I am great friends with. I've been going with them, Adam and Nikki, to the races for at least the last 3 years, and it is always a fantastic day out. We book our tickets in the Queen Anne enclosure, which is the one nearest to the Royal Box, and it gives you access to the parade ring. And also, one of my favourite things at the end of racing, you get to gather around the bandstand when they have the good old sing-song at the end, which is always good fun. Ascot isn't the easiest of places in the world to get to from where I live, particularly train or public transport wise, and getting a taxi from my home is quite expensive. So to cut the cost and make a bit of a weekend of it, Linda and I decided to stay in Maidenhead. Now, I used to work in Maidenhead for about 2 years, and I got the train to Maidenhead from London to meet Linda at the hotel. I must say, walking up Maidenhead High Street was like a trip down memory lane for me, just remembering all the places that I used to hang out and where I used to go for my lunch. So that was actually quite nice. The night before Ascot, I didn't get to Maidenhead till fairly late, but then us being us, as we do, we went out for a meal. Quick Pizza Express, who we like because they're celiac accredited, so their gluten-free food is spot on, set us up nicely for the following day. Now, staying in hotels, it's not always necessarily that easy for me to get gluten-free food. For that reason, I don't always book in for breakfast at the hotel. It's sometimes easier if I go and find my own. So on the Saturday that we were going to the races, I got up and headed out to find a supermarket to pick up a few items that I could have for my very own gluten-free breakfast and try and fill me up for the day. Because once again, even at big events, it is sometimes quite hard for me to get gluten-free food that I know there's no chance of cross-contamination with. I did have the foresight and the organisational skills to book a taxi to take us from the hotel in Maidenhead to the races. Adam and Nikki met us there. We actually had a quick drink in the hotel bar before we headed off in the taxi. That was a very funny taxi ride. We'd not seen each other for a while, so we were catching up, having a laugh. It was good. The taxi driver was joining in. We were making him laugh. It was all going really well. And as it happened, the firm that we booked with had done a deal with Ascot to get their taxi area literally right opposite where you enter. So we got dropped off more or less right outside the gates, which was not such a big thing for me and Adam, but for the two girls in their heels, they were quite pleased about that. Normally, when we head into Ascot, after we've taken the initial pictures of us in our outfits all looking fantastic, generally, we kind of go to the right of the entrance into the main bit of the Queen Anne enclosure, where you've got a couple of levels of bars and you've got the steps and seating that takes you down to the actual race course. This time, for whatever reason, while we were taking the photos, Adam spotted a bar that looked fairly quiet to the left of where we normally go, and it was right next to the Royal Enclosure. So close, in fact, we were not sure if it was in the Royal Enclosure or not. Anyway, we had a look down there. Turns out it was an area that we were allowed to go in with our tickets. It was actually quite quiet. We managed to get ourselves a table that we stayed at for pretty much all of the day. And there were 2 bars nearby, neither of which really ever had a big queue throughout the day. It was right next to the walkway that the horses enter the racecourse from, and therefore, of course, the one where the winner comes back after the race. So we got a great view of all the racehorses on show, which was fantastic. We got to see every single winner come in and come past us, which was great. We were playing a little bit of a game because obviously they tend to film the winners. There's lots of TV cameras about at that point. We were trying to position ourselves along the rails of various points just to see if we could get in the background on television. I'm not sure if we managed it or not because we were there, therefore not watching on TV. It did mean right at the start of the proceedings as well, the royal procession, the King and the Queen came right past us. I am convinced it was a wave aimed at me because the King wasn't waving. I started waving. He waved back. So therefore, definitely waving at me. No question, no argument, right? We were lucky once again with the weather. It was another glorious day, which always adds to it. I only had one winner and a couple of places, so I got a little bit of money back. It wasn't my most successful trip. However, my mate Adam did very well. There was a horse came in at 80 to 1, an 80 to 1 winner, which is relatively rare at Royal Ascot normally, although there had been some big price winners over this entire festival. Although it went off at 80 to 1, he took a bet online when it was 110 to 1. So he won himself about £244, which obviously, he was very happy about, and because we were in that area where the winning horse returns, I managed to get a picture of him with his winning horse behind him. We had a great afternoon, having a few drinks and having a bit of a laugh. Once the day's racing had finished, we headed over to the bandstand and had a good old sing-song round there. They do all the classics. It's always fantastic, particularly on the final day of Royal Ascot. It just seems to be more electric. And because it was the final day, they do have a big party for everyone. They have a DJ set up, speakers everywhere, and for the last 2 hours, it is just one big disco. That was great as well. Although you do see some interesting sights by that point. Some people have clearly drunk a lot more than others when it comes to that part of the day, and I have to say, they are very easy to spot. I think we ended up leaving the racecourse at about 8 o'clock and managed to get a taxi relatively quickly, all things considered, bearing in mind how many people were there. We just got a taxi back again to our hotel in Maidenhead, and our 2 mates just joined us for a final couple of drinks there before we said goodbye to them and went to bed ourselves. So we were staying in Maidenhead. I've got a really good friend of mine who lives just down the road in the Dawdy area. Now, I'd not seen him for quite a while, mainly because our diaries are both so busy, we can never actually find a point when neither of us are doing anything to actually spend the time to catch up. So I sent him a text message when I knew I was going to be around Maidenhead that weekend, just to see if he was free so I could pop in and see him and his family at his house. As it turned out, luckily he was. So on that Sunday morning, Linda and I got up, found ourselves some breakfast, and then went over to see him. He has got not only a lovely house, but a huge back garden that just seems to go on forever. So we went round there and spent the time sitting in his back garden and just chatting. I did manage to catch up with his wife very briefly as well, which was great, but then she was headed out with some of her mates, and I did get to see his 2 kids and have a bit of a catch up with them as well, which was great. Now, the plan was to go round, maybe have a cup of tea, spend half an hour there, having a quick chat and a catch up. It was so nice sitting in the shade in his garden, and we hadn't seen each other for quite some time. It was actually the first time he had met Linda, my girlfriend, as well. So we were there in the end for about 4.5 hours, and it was just wonderful. He's a great engineer and good at building things. His oldest son is a big fan of theme parks, and a couple of years ago, he actually built him a fully working roller coaster in the back garden. Now, due to COVID and other reasons, it was the first time I'd actually been to his house once again when the roller coaster was fully up. And I walked down the end of his garden to have a look at that. It is amazing, and it's way bigger than I was expecting it to be. When his two boys grow out of that thing, it looks that good, the way it weaves round and the size of it. I reckon he might even be able to sell it to Alton Towers or Chesterton World of Adventure. As Linda and I really don't seem to eat out enough, on the way back from my mate's place, we stopped off in Marlow to have some food at Cote. It's the first time I'd been to the one in Marlow. They've got a really nice outdoor area at the back, all enclosed. So we grabbed a table there and had a nice, of course, 3-course meal there, because I do love a starter, which was some baked camembert with gluten-free bread, which I must say was amazing. Absolutely love that. And of course, I have got a sweet tooth, so if there's any sorts of gluten-free dessert on offer, I'm there. I do like Marlow. It's one of those places I've been to a lot over the years. I think it's great there. It's got a nice vibe to the place, and I just like having a nice walk along the river there. Just seems very relaxing, and I went there a lot as a kid too, so I think it does kind of remind me of my childhood. Takes me back there every time I go. So that wrapped up what was a fantastic weekend. We're already planning, by the way, to get tickets and go on the Saturday to Royal Ascot next year. It's such great entertainment. The standard of racing is amazing. You get to hang out with royalty and just have a thoroughly good time with mates as well. I mean, what is not to like? Last weekend, I went to a christening with Linda. It was for her brother's youngest son. It's been a while since I've been to a christening, and as it happened, it was at a Catholic church. Growing up, through my father and granddad in particular, I was brought up Catholic and still consider myself as such, although I'm not the greatest one in the world, it's fair to say. I was christened, of course, in a Catholic church and did my communion. I actually went to a Tuesday school for the religion for quite a few years when I was at primary school, but then football took over and I kind of got away from it a bit. But it was quite interesting to be back witnessing a Catholic christening for the first time in quite some time. A lot of it did come back to me. It's funny how you haven't heard or read anything for many, many years, and then when you do, it just triggers all those memories. It was a lovely christening at a church in Watford that I've not been to before. There was only about 30 or 40 of us there, and it was just booked for the christening. You know, sometimes, of course, they're tagged into an actual church service, or you have several christenings taking place at once. This was just the one christening, so we all stood and gathered round the font, and the whole ceremony was conducted there. The child in question was already 2 years old, so therefore there wasn't any tears, wasn't any crying. Fair play to him, he took it all nicely at his stride. Afterwards, we went back to the Metropolitan Police Sports Centre in Bushey, where Linda's brother's girlfriend actually works, and through that managed to get a function room for the christening party, which was very nice. Again, it was a lovely afternoon, so we sat outside for most of it and met a lot of fun and interesting people who I'd not met before, including somebody who was best mates and grew up with Vinnie Jones, which was quite interesting. Obviously, he had a few stories about the former footballer, now film star. So that was all good and quite interesting. Once again, though, I did have to bring my own food to be on the safe side, which is fine, by the way. I said that I was going to do that from the start. I don't expect people to be able to supply gluten-free food at these sort of events. All I ask is their understanding if I rock up with my own Christmas sandwiches and eat them in the corner. I'm not being rude. It's just safest and easiest for everyone. After the christening, we went back to Linda's and I got changed out of my suit and into something more suitable for the comedy night in Wembley that we were going to. We booked the comedy night about a week ago, and when we booked it, we didn't bother checking if there was anything else happening around Wembley at the same time. That was a slight mistake because, as it turned out, Def Leppard and the Motley Crue were playing at Wembley Stadium. So therefore, we realised probably not much point driving, as by the time we needed to be there for the comedy, all the car parking spaces would have been taken up by the concert goers. So we decided to take the train. You'll be unsurprised by the next part of this story. Obviously, I couldn't really eat other than snacks that I'd brought to the christening, so therefore we needed some food before the comedy. This time, we tried Frankie and Benny's, at the Wembley outlet. Again, they're celiac accredited, so I can eat there. They haven't got a massive selection of food that is gluten-free for celiacs, but there was enough for me. I found some potato skins for starters and a pasta dish for the main. Sadly, because we were in a hurry to get to the comedy night, I didn't have a chance to have any dessert. I know, shocking. The comedy night was at the fairly new theatre in Wembley called the Troubadour. It's on the site and basically used to be the building that was the Fountain Studios in Wembley. Lots of different TV shows were filmed there, including Britain's Got Talent and The X Factor used to be in that building, as well as many other shows. I went to see The Last Leg there and a couple of other panel shows as well. It was also where most of the studio work for the English episode of Friends, when they come over to England for Ross's wedding, that was shot at Fountain Studios as well. Although it is now a theatre, the actual main auditorium with the high ceilings and the way it's set up does still very much have the feel of a TV studio. That said, they have now got a nice big bar area, which they didn't have before. It's quite an odd room, the auditorium as well, because it was originally set up for TV and they currently got it set up for New Biz, which is a musical theatre production they have on normally. The slightly odd thing is the audience sit on three sides, which I think is fine if you watch it a play. It's great, no problem at all, if you watch it a TV show being filmed. But I think it's really odd if you're a comedian doing stand-up to a place that has three sides to it. I did many years ago something called the Tringe Festival, the roving comedy night with the great Logan Murray teaching us for 8 weeks. Then we went out and did stand-up around 4 different pubs in Tring. Each group had a professional comedian. There was a compere in each pub. It was a great fun night. But one of the pubs there, you had the audience three sides of you. And when I did that gig, you don't really know which side to play at. You're trying to talk to all three sides. And it just makes it a bit disjointed. And I felt that maybe that was happening. That said, all the comedians were absolutely brilliant. I enjoyed it. They were on top form. It was a good night. Olga Koch was hosted. I like her. I've seen her before. She is fantastic. She's also recently had a programme on Radio 4, which was very good and worth checking out if you get a chance. The first act on was a man who I have seen quite a few times before, as it turns out, and a fellow Spurs fan as well, Rhys James, who, as ever, was brilliant. I am a big fan of his. I thought he was great. He opened things up. Then, of course, as tends to happen at any comedy night, you want to get as many intervals in as you can so people can get a drink, which is fine. So after he was on, we had a bit of a break. In part two, after Olga had come back on and chatted a bit to more of the audience, doing the gig, by the way, after I completed a triathlon in the morning, which is no mean feat in itself. The next two acts on were Fatiha Al-Ghori, who I have seen before, and she is brilliant as well. Very, very funny stuff from her. The thing I enjoyed most about her set was there was two people in front of me who were absolutely in hysterics at everything she was saying, and I enjoyed it as much from finding her stuff funny anyway, but just watching the people in front of me absolutely in hysterics all the way through. So that was great. And next up was someone I'd not actually seen live before, although he has been on BGT. And that's Nabil Abdulrashid, who again was great. I loved his set. It was very funny, very clever, very unique. And he is going on tour next year, he said, so he's definitely one who's worth looking out for. Then it was time for one more quick break, of course, before our final act, the headline act, who was Phil Wang. Again, I've seen Phil a couple of times before. I saw him years ago, the first time, when he was just kind of starting out and he was getting together one of his first Edinburgh shows. He did a work in progress gig in Berkhamsted with Matt Ford. They were on together and I thought he was fantastic then. And he was so friendly. We had a bit of a chat to him after that gig as well. And this latest performance, as you'd expect from a man of his class, was very funny, very good. I enjoyed the comedy night. I'm not totally convinced the Troubadour is the best venue for comedy. It's not the easiest, I don't think, for the comedians to play. That is for sure. Last Sunday, I did something that I've been meaning to get around to do for a little while. I saw it about a month previous, and it kept looking like it was going to close, but thankfully they kept extending it. And now I've just managed to get it done about a week before it does actually finally finished. I am a massive Star Wars fan. I'll make no secret about that. I heard about this mini exhibition in London called The Fans Strike Back. It's not an official Star Wars thing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's something that's put together by a group of fans who all absolutely love the films and all the spin-offs. They're fully invested in it. They've made their own models and they managed to borrow the odd bit of film memorabilia from all the films as well. It's very nicely done. It's in South Kensington. I wasn't sure exactly what to expect when I went in, but instantly I loved it. There were different models of many of the characters across all the films and the spin-offs, and there's some great photo opportunities as well. I was trying to get selfies of myself with all the characters, which kind of worked out. And as I was there going around by myself, I managed to employ the help of some very friendly members of the public to take my pictures in certain situations. They had a reconstruction of the Emperor's chair, so you could sit in that. They had one of the bike cruisers from Return of the Jedi that you could sit on, which was a great photo opportunity. Absolutely love that. They've actually got the bridge of the Death Star set out so you could peer through that and see all the recognisable spaceships. And the other good photo opportunity is they've got a wall with a lightsaber painted on. And if you put your hands and hold it right, it looks like you're holding the lightsaber against the background, which was great. The other thing I liked as well, they had lots and lots of Star Wars toys, and it reminded me of all the Star Wars toys I had that I gave away about 10 years ago that I sold off for £400, which if I'd have kept, I reckon they'd be worth a little bit more than that by now, but that's life. There was also a VR experience to try. Now, believe it or not, I had never done VR before. I was there, I was invested, it was Star Wars, I thought I'd give it a go. I actually really enjoyed it. I was a bit concerned it would just be all kids there and then me, but there were some other adults getting involved, thankfully. It was a short VR experience where basically you were piloting a spacecraft on a mission. I quite enjoyed it. I kept inside my head going through old Star Wars quotes as I was flying around, and I think I had a smile on my face most of the way through, although I obviously couldn't see because I had the VR mask on, but that was quite good fun. And I bought the VIP experience, which meant at the end, as I was leaving, I had a chance to either have 2 photos taken in their photo booth where you could dress up with lightsabers and robes and other different items for your photos on a choice of backgrounds. You can either have 2 photos as part of your VIP experience, or you can have a poster. I opted for the 2 photos. I had an excellent time. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I did manage to see it. They've got some fun stuff there if you're a Star Wars fan. I'm actually quite excited at the moment because I go on holiday later today. I saw Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band on Thursday in Hyde Park. I'll tell you all about how great that was next time we speak. But later today, I am flying off to Ibiza for the week to have a nice, relaxing holiday where I don't plan to do much other than lie by the pool, lie on the beach, and just get a bit of a tan and relax. That's totally the plan. That may mean the next Blogcast is a little delayed, but we'll see how we get on. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves. Have fun. Bye-bye.